Hello, everyone, and welcome back to NCOIL One-on-One. With us here today is New York Senator Neil Breslin, Chair of the New York Senate Insurance Committee and former NCOIL President. Senator Breslin, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm delighted to be here. Delighted to be here.
Great to hear. So let's hop right in. Can you tell us how you first got involved in public service?
Public service meaning government related. So I refused to get involved in public service for a number of years, and finally was convinced some almost 25 years ago to run for the Senate. And it was more the appeal to pride. I thought, wow, they want me to be a senator. And I didn't, I don't think I thought it through as closely as I should have. And I think I was following. I have a brother who was a Supreme Court judge and another brother who was a county executive. Both of him enjoyed, and both of them enjoyed public service. So I decided to run and beat an incumbent, and the rest is history in a sense.
Wow. So it runs in the family, it sounds like.
Yeah, and my parents kind of discouraged us.
Mhm.
They encouraged us to be involved in your community, but not necessarily through the government. And from that, I mean, it's one of the ways that led me into having enough face time to run for public office. I helped found a halfway house for young women. I was on a drug rehab board. I was a longtime vice president of a homeless shelter and a number of other things, which I thought were really following the commitment of my parents, and I still believe they were. And my brothers were doing very much the same thing. So it was an avenue for public service. And once I got in it, I obviously had a hard time leaving.
So you've been involved in the Senate for 25 years. What issues have you been most involved with throughout your service?
Uh, I guess, obviously, we look to the insurance area. I think at first, sometimes legislatures back then, that was there wasn't a lot of competition to be in my case, the Democrat on insurance. It was just like saying, well, give Breslin insurance. No, not no one else wants it. And I tell people now that I think I probably knew about as much about insurance as I would spell it incorrectly. I would spell it ENCE rather than ANCE. But once I got involved, I saw how it wasn't dissimilar to being involved in your community. I was providing a service to a community, trying to make it affordable, make the industry honest, and give good products out. And I think we've accomplished, not totally, but we're working towards that goal, and I've been very satisfied.
That's great to hear. So obviously you said very involved in your community and obviously very involved in the Senate. I'm sure that takes up a lot of time, also gives you a lot of unique experiences. How do you feel like your public service has made an impact with your family life?
Uh, as a practicing lawyer who did trials and other things, I could always program what I was going to do every day. And as a legislator, you're responding every day. So it's sometimes the family wasn't as understanding as they wanted to be when I tell them, well, I can't make that Wednesday night thing, or I can't be at the event on Saturday because I had, business as a senator. And your constituency, mine is made up of 320,000 people, plus or minus. Uh, I don't think they care if you're not there, or they don't care if you are there. They care if you're not there, and you get feedback in a negative way if you're not there. So when I tell my staff, which is unlike a lot of legislators, I'm the one elected. You're the ones that work during the daytime, go home to your families. And if I have to go out at night, I'll go out alone. And if I have to go out on weekends, I generally go alone.
Wow. So you mentioned that you had a very extensive career as a lawyer. I know you're an active member of the New York State Bar Association. How do you feel the impact of that kind of perspective has on your legislative duties and how you approach the legal system from that way?
I don't think I don't think they're totally dissimilar. And I was the chairman of the largest section of the New York State Bar, for a couple of years. It was called the. There were all these diverse sections of the bar, but they were all particularized, and there was never a section for the general practice of law. So we created one, and it became the largest section of the New York State Bar, which, is you can imagine, is a very big group of lawyers. So I've gotten the administration of large organizations, A, through my involvement here, but B, through the Bar Association and through NCOIL, which
Great.
I have a great deal of trust, faith, and admiration for.
That's awesome. So you're a lifelong New York resident, very involved in New York politics. Are there any issues you think are unique to New York as a state?
Yeah, I think there are. I think we ought to start with geography. We're a fairly large state, and they used to my competition. I happen to be a Democrat. All of the Democrats, uh, 25 years ago, were located in and around New York City. And when I was first elected, the other side would put out maps showing Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, the whole rest of the state, which is big, with one little arrow to Albany, where the only Democrat was in Albany, New York. And all the rest was Republican, and New York City was totally Democratic. So it was an immediate battleground for upstate issues versus downstate. Upstate, smaller cities, tremendous farming communities, and of which I have over 500 farms in my district. And so that was the battle, and that battle's been resolved. It's kind of gotten together where there's both sides are in both areas, and I think it's to the betterment of the people we serve, because by doing that, you're not battling as much. You're getting together with the other side, trying to come up with better ideas to serve your public.
That's great. So obviously very involved and entrenched in New York. Moving on, how did you first then move to become involved in NCOIL, and how long have you been involved?
Oh, my gosh. There was Bob Mackin, who was one of the founders, chatted with me about NCOIL, and said it goes, I think he said it goes to nice cities for meetings generally. He didn't tell me that the meeting started at 7 o'clock in the morning and they went till 7 o'clock at night, and there was no time to enjoy those cities. But I thought intellectually, as you know, every insurance is state based. So I was the ranker then on insurance, and I started thinking, gee, I'm not going to come up with enough ideas. And if there's 49 other states that are coming up with ideas in their insurance department, wouldn't it be good for me to look to see what they do? Because the old adage, there's nothing new under the sun. You would get ideas from what they've done that has been successful. So I went, I interacted and became very, very friendly with a lot of people from Montana to North Dakota to Texas, and to form personal and long-time relationships. And it was invaluable, just the sitting chatting after those long days I talked about, just chatting about what they're doing in their state versus what we're doing. It was just beneficial to everyone involved. And I don't understand why there aren't more organizations that do the same thing. So I found it wonderfully beneficial and very much worthwhile to the voters here in New York State.
That's great to hear. How would you describe your overall experience throughout your involvement in the organization?
Well, it was. Uh, I think the first thing that there was like in my mind several tests that had to be. I said, I don't want to be in an organization that's dependent upon party enrollment. And that was the first thing that I realized, that I became friends with a lot of people and nobody was asking me, or I wasn't asking them whether they were a Democrat or Republican. I would more likely try to decide who was bright and who was not. and try to hang around with people smarter than myself. And it just coincidentally, some of my best friends, one George Kaiser, who's passed away from North Dakota, uh, he happened to be in the other party. I didn't know that for about 5 years. I assumed we got along so well and we agreed on most things that he was probably a member of my party. But it was beneficial, hopefully, to George and beneficial to me.
It's great. Yeah, we actually have had at the past couple meetings an even split of Democrats to Republicans. So it's really nice to see that bipartisan cooperation working on this level. So
It's about time. Yes, that's
yeah,
right.
that's for sure.
That's great. And everyone benefits from it. You go back to your state, if you get an idea on what's going on in North Dakota or Kansas, you come back and you say, "Gee, I think I can." We don't have that in New York State. Why don't I have bill drafting come up with some ideas for a statute? And because I've been here so many years, I have the ability to introduce and generally get things accomplished by a statute.
And so you were very instrumental in promoting that bipartisanship. You served through the officer ranks, ultimately becoming president in 2015. What motivated you to run for an officer position and to, serve at that level?
Well, I think it's because had been to a couple things. One, there's no term limits in New York State, so I was there for a long time, and I got to be friends with people who had been officers of NCOIL, and they began asking me, and I hadn't considered it. I thought I was getting a lot from NCOIL, and maybe it was time to give back more. So sometime before that, I'd been in NCOIL, I would guess 10 years or so before I said, yes, I will go into the officer route. And but I had to be convinced, and there were a number of the members who had been there before me who said it's worthwhile and it's beneficial to you and it's beneficial to NCOIL. So I jumped on board, and it was an exciting ride with issues. There's so many issues now that we never ever imagined. Just the international insurance issues that have become part of the process over the years. And now, just I'm off the top of my head thinking of things like AI and how its impact has just permeated the insurance area. And now with the pandemic, the cost of health insurance and the cost of other parts of insurance, it's to me is important because we have to make our products, the insurance products, generally accessible to everyone. And if we don't, we're leaving some out, and it's not an appropriate answer to say they can't afford it.
That's great. Yeah, so you cited a bunch of emerging issues that we are seeing now kind of percolate and develop, like you said, AI and those things. How would you say the organization has changed over time and kind of dealt with these emerging and rising issues? Um,
Uh, I, I think that the presenter once NCOIL, because I was growing up at a time when a lot of people didn't know about NCOIL. So our ability to get quality people in the industry to attend NCOIL, become involved, be speakers, kind of percolated the various issues that we were addressing. And it wasn't like talking to each other. We were looking to the outside area, to the insurance companies, not to be controlled by, but have them participate and give advice. And I would kid them, sometimes your advice is okay. And they would they would have the same laugh with me. And over the years, it just made us a better, more complete organization.
Great. So speaking of the industry, do you see any benefits of being involved in NCOIL for industry representatives, consumer groups, things like that?
Oh, oh my God, absolutely. It's a, I mean, the NCOIL meetings, as I mentioned earlier, they really did begin at 7 o'clock and they really did end at 7 o'clock. And there wasn't a lot of time until Sunday around noon. And a lot of people had to get home at Sunday around noon. And just the interaction with the industry, it's the same with the interaction with legislators from various states could give you input you don't get in that kind of sterile environment of them coming into your Senate office. You're kind of it isn't like somebody lobbying for a company and the legislator. Out there, there were people just chatting in the idle time and listening to good conference work that just created an environment where you learn from. I profited by the ability to call industry people in various states who I got to be friends with, saying, "How would you approach this?" or "How did you approach this?" And put that together with the legislators I was talking to at the same time, always understanding that there's a lot of smart people in other states and a lot of insurance companies and other related businesses that can give me information that make me a better legislator.
That's great. So we've seen in New York that partisanship doesn't have to have an impact on insurance legislation. You worked very closely with Senator Jim Seward, who we know is another very active and integral member of NCOIL. Is that still continuing on now? Do you see any of that changing?
Who told you I worked nicely with Jim Seward? Right.
You got
Uh,
stuff done now.
right. Jim and I, over a period of plus 20 years, he he was the chairman more than I have been, but I was the ranker, he was the chairman. Then I was the chairman, he was the ranker. And I can say over almost 25 years, we've never had an argument. And as you know, Jim retired a few years ago. Had just had dinner with him, incidentally, last week in Cooperstown, which is part of his old district. And he's a wonderful friend, and he had great staff people. And I think he liked my staff, and they interacted with each other. And again, the result was a better product. And I've had over the years, you have it gets so partisan, and it is very partisan now. That people are reluctant to deal with you because you're in the other party, and I'm reluctant to deal with people because I don't trust them, not because they're in another party. And as you might, if you looked at my resume, I'm also chairman of the Legislative Ethics Commission. So my job is to make sure that the people we elect follow a set rule of guidelines and orders, and that includes both parties. And if if everybody's working hand in hand, we get a better product and we get better people.
That's great. So, are there any issues or model laws that you've worked on through NCOIL or also in New York that you've kind of been your favorite insurance issue to deal with?
That's I'm going to give you. I thought that might be a question. I don't. Uh, I tend to move on, uh, and there's no particular model law that I favored more than another one. I love the ideas that were provided to me that allowed me to participate in new legislation, but to pick one out, uh, I, I guess in the healthcare area, any way I can make it fairer and more affordable for all in little pieces, I try to do it, and we're not even close to being there. The life area of insurance, and I just get back from a life insurance council meeting in New York State, and they're terrific. But it's more of a state area, and it kind of because of the quality of the people lobbying for them, I can kind of turn the other way a little bit. And property and casualty, as you know, that creates some problems on cost and the effect and still the effectiveness of no fault versus fault. But when you get into health insurance, there's a crisis every day, and who pays who? Where does the money come from? And where does it go first? Does it go to the patient? Does it go to the hospital? And that's one that I've been working on. It seems like for 5 years, and we'll never have a complete answer. But but again, having said that, it's pretty much the lack of predictability as to what your next major issue will be is not like practicing law. It's very instantaneous and very devastating.
There will always be more work to do on insurance issues, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So before we let you go, there's a quick lightning round of questions that I'm going to ask you just to get to
Oh
know the
boy.
audience a little bit better. You ready?
I'll listen.
Okay. Can you tell us what
Yeah.
your favorite all-time movie is?
Uh, I would guess uh, I, no, I can't. I mean, I saw some of the old time movies are great. That are older that I did not see directly at the time. They were good, but to single one out, I'm going to beg off on that. I
Okay,
could
favorite
think
food?
bigger. Oh, I like good fish. I
There
wouldn't
you
mind
go.
a good lobster, or I love clams and oysters. And sometimes they don't agree with me as much as I'd like, but that's generally what's life about. Is things that you like aren't as good for you as your doctor would say.
Fair enough. Book or author?
Uh, well, David, I like a number of different. Doris Kearns Goodwin is a terrific author. I tend more to books of written on real life. David McCullough, who was the biographer for John Adams and others, who just passed away in the last couple of years. And I went to see him several times. Was just a phenomenal writer and an articulate person in person, as was Doris Kearns Goodwin. So uh, I get accused of saying, well, if you're going to have some idle time and begin to read, why are you reading about government and politics? Well, it's interesting to see their backgrounds and their involvement and the ideas they come up with. And it's when I think back to reading uh, like a biography on John Adams, the idea that he's taking a horse from Massachusetts to Philadelphia or Washington at a time, or the Kinderhook Fox president from New York State, who came from a little town south of Albany, and his father was a barkeep. And in the 1840s, so then any communication system ultimately became president of the United States. You have to almost have that biography to say, to think through, my gosh, the communication system we have now, the transportation system we have now, they were devoid of any of that. And how did they rise to be the son of a barkeep in a little town and become president of the United States?
Really interesting. All right, and then the last one, can you tell us three dinner party guests, living or dead?
Oh boy, I would start with President Obama, who I've met several times, and the thing that makes me I always remember the first time I met him was that he said, "Well, Neil, that's you have the job I had before I became president." I just laughed to myself. It's a rather meteoric rise from being a state senator to president of the United States. And I so other ones, I either of them. I think Teddy Roosevelt more than who was more of a Republican than a Democrat. Teddy Roosevelt more than FDR. I thought FDR was more of a politician. I think Teddy Roosevelt was someone who just had, uh, I guess I'd consider his lifetime charismatic. He did so many things and was powerful in so many areas and came up with so many uh, positive ideas to make our government better. Well, there's two. I didn't give you three. I can think about it while we're going on.
There you go. All right. We'll hold you to giving us a third answer sometime later then.
Okay,
All
terrific.
right, this wraps up this month's NCOIL one-on-one interview with New York Senator Neil Breslin. Senator Breslin, thank you so much for taking the time and thank you for your service.
Thank you. But look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.